The airlock door opened with a hiss. Velthar stepped onto the human warship with confidence in every movement. His 4 arms moved naturally at his sides. His armor plating caught the light as he walked. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, towering over everyone in the corridor. Captain Dae Sung waited at the airlock. He wore the standard human military uniform. He looked small next to the alien warrior. His dark hair was cut short. His face showed no expression as he offered his hand. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Vigilance," Dae Sung said. His voice was calm and professional. Velthar looked at the hand for a moment. Then he wrapped one of his large hands around it. The human's grip was firm but weak compared to his own, just as Velthar expected. "I thank you for this opportunity," Velthar said. His voice rumbled deep in his chest. "The Krithian Empire is honored to participate in this exchange program." Dae Sung nodded and released his hand. "Lieutenant Hana will show you to your quarters. We'll have a briefing in 2 hours." A woman stepped forward. She was shorter than Dae Sung, with her hair pulled back tight. Her uniform was marked with medical insignia. She saluted Velthar in the human way. "This way, Commander," Hana said. As they walked through the ship, Velthar observed everything. The corridors were narrow. The ceilings were low. Everything was built for beings much smaller than himself. He had to duck through some doorways. "Your ship is designed for efficiency," Velthar said. It was not really a compliment. "We work with what we have," Hana replied. Her tone was neutral. They passed several human soldiers in the corridors. Velthar studied them carefully. They were all small. Their bodies looked soft and fragile, no natural armor, no claws or fangs. Their skin looked like it would tear easily. These were the newest members of the Galactic Coalition. These were supposed to be warriors. Velthar had fought in 23 major campaigns. He had served for 60 years. He had seen real combat on dozens of worlds. He had earned every scar on his armor plating. The Krithians were known across the galaxy as the greatest warriors. Their military academies were legendary. Their battle tactics were studied by every species, and now he was here to learn from humans. The thought almost made him laugh. Hana showed him to his quarters. The room had been modified for his size, but it was still cramped. He set down his equipment and turned to the lieutenant. "I have read about human military history," Velthar said. "Your species has only been in space for 70 years. You joined the Coalition 30 years ago. Your combat experience is limited to small conflicts with pirates and raiders." Hana's expression did not change. "That's what the records show. The Krithian Empire has defended the galaxy for 3,000 years, Velthar continued. "I mean no disrespect, but I wonder what I can learn here." "I guess we'll find out," Hana said. She gave him a small smile that did not reach her eyes. "The briefing starts in 2 hours. Don't be late." She left him alone in the quarters. Velthar sat down on the reinforced chair. He accessed his datapad and reviewed the files on human military capabilities. Everything confirmed what he already knew. Humans were physically weak. Their reaction times were average. Their lifespans were short. They had no natural weapons or defenses. The Coalition had accepted them for political reasons, Velthar decided. Perhaps for their industrial capacity or their population numbers. Not for their warriors. 2 hours later, Velthar entered the briefing room. It was full of human officers. Dae Sung stood at the front near a holographic display. Next to him stood a young sergeant with a serious face. His name tag read, Tae-Ho. "Commander Velthar," Dae Sung said. "We're about to begin." Velthar found a spot at the back. The chair was too small, so he stood. Dae Sung activated the display. It showed their patrol route through a contested border region. The area was known for raids by the Vorgath. They were a brutal species that attacked supply lines and civilian targets. We'll be running this route for the next 2 weeks, Dae-sung explained. Standard patrol pattern. We maintain communication with Coalition Command every 6 hours. If we encounter any hostile forces, we follow Engagement Protocol 7. The briefing was professional but basic, nothing impressive. Velthar had seen better tactical presentations from Krithian cadets. After the briefing, Velthar decided to observe the human Marines during their training. He stood in the observation area above the training deck. Below him, about 20 humans ran through combat drills. They moved through obstacle courses. They practiced weapons handling. They ran combat simulations. Velthar watched with growing disappointment. Their physical performance was poor by Krithian standards. They struggled with weights that a young Krithian could lift easily. Their running speed was slow. Their endurance was limited. They had to rest frequently. Taeho was leading the training session. He shouted instructions and corrections. The Marines pushed themselves hard. Velthar could see that. But effort did not equal capability. Hana appeared next to him in the observation area. She looked down at the training deck without speaking. They work hard, Velthar said carefully. He tried to sound diplomatic. But they are not built for warfare. Their bodies are too fragile, too weak. How do they survive in real combat? Hana turned to look at him. Her eyes were cold. Survival isn't just about strength, Commander. In my experience, the strong survive and the weak die, Velthar said. That is the nature of war. Is it? Hana asked. She looked back at the Marines below. Maybe you've been fighting different wars than us. Before Velthar could respond, she walked away. He felt confused by her words. What did she mean by different wars? War was war. Combat was combat. The strong defeated the weak. That was universal truth. Velthar spent the next few days settling into the routine aboard the ship. He attended more briefings. He observed more training sessions. He ate meals in the dining hall with the human crew. Everyone was polite to him, but distant. Professional, but not friendly. He tried to engage Dae-sung in conversation about warrior culture. The Krithians took great pride in their martial traditions. But the captain kept their conversations brief and focused on duty. Do humans have warrior traditions? Velthar asked one day. Dae-sung paused. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or memory. We have traditions, he said quietly. But we don't celebrate them the way you might expect. Why not? Is it not an honor to be a warrior? Honor is complicated, Dae-sung said. He looked away. Excuse me, Commander. I have duties to attend to. Velthar watched him leave. There was something in the captain's eyes, something dark and deep. Velthar had seen that look before in veteran soldiers, but only in those who had witnessed true horrors, only in those who had seen genocide or planetary destruction. But that made no sense. Humans had never faced such things. Their military history was clean and simple. Small conflicts, limited casualties. Nothing that would create that kind of darkness in a soldier's eyes. The ship continued on its patrol route. The days passed quietly. Velthar began to feel restless. This exchange program was a waste of his time. There was nothing to learn here. Humans were simply not warriors in the way that mattered. He decided he would submit his report early. He would recommend that the Krithian Empire focus its exchange efforts on other species, perhaps the Thorians or the Nexalith, species that actually understood combat. Then the alarms began to sound. The ship shuddered as something hit the shields. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Velthar's combat instincts kicked in immediately. He ran toward the bridge. Everything was about to change. Velthar reached the bridge in seconds. Dae-sung was already in his command chair. Officers worked at their stations with focused intensity. The main screen showed 3 Vorgath raider ships approaching fast. Battle stations, Dae-sung said calmly. All hands prepare for combat. Seal all bulkheads. Velthar moved to an auxiliary station. His four hands flew across the controls with practiced ease. He pulled up tactical data. 3 ships against 1. Not terrible odds, but not good either. The Vorgath were known for their aggressive tactics. "Shields at maximum," reported one officer. "Weapons armed and ready," said another. The first Vorgath ship opened fire. Energy beams struck the Eternal Vigilance's shields. The ship shook but held steady. Dae-Sung gave orders in that same calm voice. "Return fire. Target their weapons systems. Helm, evasive pattern delta." The human ship moved and fired back. Velthar watched the crew work. They were efficient, well-trained, but he still expected them to show fear soon. The Vorgath were brutal opponents. The second raider ship came from below. It fired missiles. Explosions rocked the ship. Sparks flew from one console. An officer jumped back. His arm burned. "Shields down to 60%, someone called out. "Keep firing," Dae-Sung ordered. "Hana, send medical teams to Deck 7. We have reports of injuries." Through the internal cameras, Velthar could see Hana already running through the corridors with her medical team. They moved fast, despite the ship shaking around them. The battle intensified. The third Vorgath ship joined the attack. The Eternal Vigilance was surrounded. Velthar had to admit the human crew was handling it well. No panic, no disorder, just focused combat. Then everything went wrong. A missile got through the shields. It struck the starboard side. The explosion tore through 3 decks. Alarms screamed. The lights flickered. "Hull breach on decks 4, 5, and 6, an officer shouted. "We're venting atmosphere. Emergency bulkheads are not responding." "Medical bay is on deck 5. Hana's voice came over the comm. "We have wounded here. Multiple patients who can't be moved." "Lieutenant, evacuate immediately," Dae-Sung ordered. "That's a direct order." "Negative, Captain." Hana's voice was firm. "I'm not leaving wounded behind. We're sealing the interior doors. We can hold." Velthar's eyes widened. The medical bay was in the breach zone. In minutes, that entire section would be exposed to space. She was choosing to stay in a death trap. "Hana, that's suicide," Dae-Sung said. His calm voice cracked for just a moment. "Then you better win this fight fast, sir," Hana replied. Velthar heard sounds of metal grinding through the comm. Hana and her team were using emergency force fields and manual door locks to create a sealed pocket. It might work for a few minutes. Maybe. "All weapons, focus fire on the lead ship," Dae-Sung ordered. His voice was hard now. "Take it down, now." The Eternal Vigilance poured all its firepower into one target. The lead Vorgath ship's shields collapsed. Its hull split open. It spun away, dead in space. But they were still in danger. The ship shook again from another impact. "Captain, we have another hull breach," Taeho's voice came through. He was somewhere in the damaged sections. "Bulkhead door on deck 4 is failing. If it goes, the breach spreads to the main reactor section." "Get out of there, Sergeant," Dae-Sung ordered. "Can't do that, sir." Taeho's voice was strained. "Someone needs to hold this door. The hydraulics are shot. I'm doing it manually." Velthar pulled up the internal sensors for Deck 4. He could see Taeho's life signs. The sergeant was in the damaged corridor. He was physically holding a massive bulkhead door closed. The door weighed tons. The pressure from the breach was trying to force it open. A human could not do that. It was physically impossible. Yet the sensors showed Taeho was doing exactly that. "Taeho, you'll be crushed," Dae-Sung said. "Probably," Taeho grunted, "but not yet. Just hurry up and end this fight, sir." Velthar felt something strange in his chest. These humans were insane. They should be retreating. They should be saving themselves. Instead, they were holding impossible positions and refusing to abandon their posts. "Commander Velthar," Dae-Sung said suddenly, "I need you to lead a team to the port weapons array. We lost the crew there. Someone needs to operate the guns manually." Velthar did not hesitate. He ran from the bridge. As he moved through the ship, he saw more impossible things. A human engineer was holding a damaged power conduit together with his bare hands. The energy was burning his skin, but he kept holding it. The light stayed on in that section. 2 Marines were carrying a wounded comrade through a corridor filled with toxic gas. They had given the injured man their breathing masks. They were suffocating but still moving forward. Velthar reached the weapons array. The room was a disaster. 2 crew members were dead, 3 were injured, but 1 man was still at the controls, blood running down his face from a head wound. He kept firing. "I've got this," Velthar said. He pushed the injured man aside gently and took over the weapons controls. His 4 arms moved across the systems. He targeted the second Vorgath ship with precision. The Crithian Empire trained the best gunners in the galaxy. Velthar proved it now. His shots were perfect. Each one struck critical systems. The second raider ship lost power and drifted away. "Good shooting, Commander," Daesung's voice came through. "One more to go." The last Vorgath ship tried to run, but the Eternal Vigilance was faster. Together, Velthar's guns and the bridge weapons caught it in a crossfire. The raider exploded. "Cease fire," Daesung ordered. "Damage control teams. Begin emergency repairs. Medical teams to all wounded. Someone get to Deck 4 and help Sergeant Taeho, and get that force field stable in the medical bay." Velthar left the weapons array and made his way to Deck 4. When he arrived, he found 5 humans trying to pry Taeho away from the bulkhead door. The sergeant's hands were locked around the door frame. His arms were shaking. His face was covered in sweat and blood. "Let go, Taeho," one Marine said gently. "We've got it now." The repair team sealed the breach. Taeho finally released the door. He collapsed immediately. The other Marines caught him. Velthar saw the sergeant's arms. They were bent at wrong angles. Both were broken. His ribs were probably crushed too. 43 minutes, one Marine said in disbelief. "He held that door for 43 minutes. They rushed Taeho to the medical bay. Velthar followed. When they arrived, he saw Hana still working. The temporary seals around the medical bay had held. Barely. She was covered in sweat and treating patients who had far worse injuries than they should have survived. "Put him on that table," Hana said when she saw Taeho. Her hands moved with quick efficiency. "Both arms broken, multiple fractured ribs, possible internal bleeding. He'll live." "How are you so calm?" Velthar asked. Hana looked at him. Her eyes were tired but steady. "Because panicking doesn't help anyone, Commander." Over the next hours, Velthar helped with repairs. He watched the human crew work. They moved through the damaged ship with purpose. Many were injured, all were exhausted, but none complained. None stopped working. Daesung appeared in the medical bay eventually. He had a deep cut across his shoulder that he had not mentioned during the battle. Hana saw it and pointed at a chair. "Sit," she ordered. "I'm fine," Daesung said. "You're bleeding through your uniform, sir. Sit down." Daesung sat. As Hana treated the wound, Velthar approached. "Captain, I must speak with you," Velthar said. "Can it wait, Commander? We have a lot of work to do." "No, it cannot." Velthar stood at his full height. "During the battle, I suggested tactical retreat. You refused. Lieutenant Hana stayed in a breach zone. Sergeant Taeho held a door that should have crushed him. You kept fighting with serious injuries. By all tactical logic, we should have withdrawn and called for support." "We had people trapped," Daesung said simply. "We don't leave people behind." "But the risk was acceptable," Daesung interrupted. His eyes were hard. "We calculated the odds. We decided we could win. We did." Velthar felt frustrated. This was not normal military discipline. This was something else. Something I do not understand. Hana finished bandaging Daesung's shoulder. She looked at Velthar with that same cold expression from before. "Maybe," she said quietly. "You just don't know what real survival looks like yet." Velthar left the medical bay confused and disturbed. Everything he thought he knew about humans was wrong. They were not weak, not really. They fought with something beyond training or discipline. It was like they had nothing to lose, or like they had already lost everything once before and refused to let it happen again. What had these humans survived to make them fight like this? 3 days after the battle, the Eternal Vigilance was still making repairs. Velthar found himself spending more time observing the human crew. He was looking for answers to questions he could not quite form yet. He noticed things he had missed before, small details that now seemed important. In the dining hall, he watched Marines eating together. One young woman removed her jacket because the room was warm. Her arms were covered in scars, not fresh wounds from the recent battle. Old scars, burns, cuts, and marks that had healed years ago. She was maybe 25 years old. How did someone so young have so many scars? Velthar looked around the room more carefully. Nearly every human bore similar marks, arms covered in old wounds. Faces with faint lines from past injuries. One man was missing 2 fingers on his left hand. Another had a long scar that ran from his ear down to his collar. These were not combat injuries from military service. Velthar had checked the records. Most of these humans had only been in the coalition military for a few years. These scars were older, much older. In the medical bay, Velthar stopped by to check on Taiho. The sergeant was awake, his arms in casts. Hana was running a scanner over his ribs. "You're healing faster than expected," Hana said. "You'll be back on duty in 3 weeks." 3 weeks? Taiho sounded disappointed. "That's too long." "Both your arms were broken and you have 4 fractured ribs," Hana said. 3 weeks is actually impressive. Velthar stepped forward. "Sergeant, that injury should keep you in medical care for at least 8 weeks. That is the standard for most species." "We're not most species," Taiho said with a slight smile. Hana packed away her scanner. As she moved, her sleeve pulled back. Velthar saw her wrist. It was covered in burn scars, old chemical burns, he realized. The kind that came from exposure to toxic materials. "Lieutenant, may I ask where you got those scars?" Velthar asked. Hana looked at her wrist. Her face became distant. "A long time ago, before I joined the military. But you were a civilian then. How did a civilian get chemical burns?" "Life was different back then," Hana said. She pulled her sleeve down. "Excuse me, Commander, I have other patients to check." She left before he could ask more questions. Velthar felt his curiosity growing into something stronger. Something was wrong here, something the humans were not talking about. That evening, Velthar went to the ship's observation deck. It was a small room with a large window looking out at the stars. He found Taiho there, standing alone. The sergeant had left the medical bay against orders. He stared out at the darkness of space. "You should be resting," Velthar said. Taiho did not turn around. "Can't sleep. I keep thinking about home." "Do you miss Earth?" "Sometimes." Taiho's voice was quiet. "But I also remember what it was like. What it looked like." "What do you mean?" Taiho finally looked at Velthar. His eyes had that same haunted look Velthar had seen before, the look of someone who had witnessed horrors. "I grew up in the reclaimed zones," Taiho said. "My childhood home was built in the ruins of an old city. When I was a kid, I used to play in the broken buildings. Sometimes we would find things buried in the rubble. Toys, bones, pictures of people who died long before I was born." Velthar felt cold. "What destroyed the city?" "We did." Taiho turned back to the window. "Humans did. We destroyed everything. Then we had to live in what was left." "I do not understand. Your species, we nearly killed ourselves, Commander." Taiho's hands were shaking slightly. "Before we reached the stars, we almost went extinct. Some memories don't fade. Some things you can't forget no matter how hard you try." Before Velthar could ask more, Taiho walked away. His steps were slow and tired. He looked like he carried a great weight. Velthar returned to his quarters. He accessed his datapad and searched through human history files. The official records showed Earth's recent past, their industrial development, their space program, their first contact with the Galactic Coalition. But there was a gap, a 40-year period with very little information. The records simply said, the Unification Wars, and then moved on. Almost all the detailed files were classified or heavily redacted. Velthar had military clearance for most Coalition files, but these human records were sealed tight. He could only see basic facts. There had been global conflicts, multiple wars over resources and territory, an estimated timeline. Nothing more. Why was this information classified? The wars had ended decades ago. What was so terrible that humans did not want other species to know? Velthar began asking careful questions. He spoke with different crew members during meals and work shifts. Most gave vague answers. Some refused to talk at all. A few shared small details. One engineer mentioned growing up in a shelter because the surface was not safe. Another spoke about ration cards and food shortages that lasted for years. A pilot casually mentioned that his grandmother had survived something called the Soul Firestorm. When Velthar asked what that was, the pilot went quiet and changed the subject. Every conversation added more pieces to a puzzle Velthar could not quite see. But the picture forming in his mind was dark and terrible. A week after the battle, Velthar found Dae Sung in the ship's small gym. The captain was exercising despite his healing shoulder. He moved through routines that looked like combat training. "Captain, I must ask you something," Velthar said. Dae Sung stopped and grabbed a towel. "Go ahead, Commander." "I have been researching human history. I found a gap in the records, the Unification Wars. Why is this information classified?" Dae Sung's face became very still. "That's not a topic we discuss freely." "But why? Every species has wars in their past. The Krithian Empire fought many conflicts before joining the Coalition. We teach our history proudly. Why do humans hide theirs?" "Because we're not proud of it," Dae Sung said quietly. "Because it's not something to celebrate." "I do not understand. War is part of civilization. Conflict shapes societies. There is no shame in—" "There is shame when you almost destroy your own species," Dae Sung interrupted. His eyes were hard. "There is shame when you kill billions of your own kind. When you poison your own world. When you nearly make your home planet uninhabitable." Velthar felt his breathing stop. "Billions?" 3.2 billion dead, Dae Sung said. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading numbers from a report. "That's 1/3 of our population at the time. Cities turned to ash, entire regions poisoned for generations. Diseases, starvation, and radiation killed more people than the actual fighting. But that is near extinction level." "Yes, it was." Dae Sung picked up his towel and wiped his face. "We call it the collapse, because everything collapsed. Governments, societies, the environment, everything." "How did you survive?" "Barely. By the end, we were too weak to keep fighting. We had to choose between cooperation or total extinction. We chose cooperation. We unified. We rebuilt, but it took 40 years to stabilize, another 30 to truly recover, and we're still dealing with the effects." Velthar sat down. His legs felt weak. "Every human on this ship, they all come from survivors of this?" "My grandmother lived through the Soul Firestorm," Dae Sung said. 14 days of continuous bombardment. She was 12 years old. She watched her city burn. Most of her family died. She survived by hiding in a subway tunnel with thousands of others. No food, no clean water, no light. When it was over, she climbed out into a city that didn't exist anymore. Lieutenant Hana? Her family survived the Asian resource wars. That's where she got her chemical burns. She was 6 years old when the factories near her home released toxic gas. Her whole district was contaminated. They had to decontaminate every person. The process left scars on everyone who went through it. And Sergeant Tae-ho? He grew up in a reclaimed zone, areas that were destroyed in the wars and slowly made safe again. He spent his childhood surrounded by death and ruins. That's normal for his generation. Velthar felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. Not fear of physical danger. Fear of understanding something too terrible to fully comprehend. You fight like you have nothing to lose, Velthar said slowly. Like you have already seen the worst. Because you have. We've seen what happens when we fail, Dae-sung said. When we give up. When we don't protect each other. Billions died because we failed. We won't let that happen again. Not to us. Not to anyone. The scars. Everyone has them. Physical scars. Mental scars. Everyone carries the collapse in some way. Some live through it directly. Others inherited the trauma from parents and grandparents. But we all know what happened. We all carry it. Dae-sung started to leave, then paused. Commander, I can arrange for you to access the classified files. You have the clearance. But I warn you, once you see what we did to ourselves, you can't unsee it. You'll understand us better, but you'll also understand why we don't talk about it. He left Velthar alone in the gym. The alien warrior sat in silence for a long time. He thought about what he had learned, about the scars he had seen, about the way humans fought in battle with desperate determination. They were not weak. They were survivors of an apocalypse. They had rebuilt themselves from literal ashes. And Velthar realized he had to see the truth. He had to understand what these humans had survived, even if it meant seeing something horrifying. Velthar submitted his formal request to Coalition Command. He needed full access to human historical records. He stated it was essential for military cooperation and integration. The request was approved within hours. Dae-sung met him in a private briefing room the next day. The room was sealed. No one could enter without authorization. Hana was there too. So was Tae-ho, despite his injuries. You're sure you want to see this? Dae-sung asked. I must understand, Velthar said. I have fought alongside your people. I have seen how you fight, but I do not understand why. I need to know. Dae-sung nodded slowly. He activated the display screen. This is humanity's shame. Our darkest chapter. We don't share this lightly. The screen came to life. It showed Earth from space, a beautiful blue and green planet. Cities lit up the night side like stars. This was Earth before the collapse, Dae-sung said. Population of 9.8 billion. Advanced civilization. We had technology, culture, prosperity. Not perfect, but alive and growing. The image changed. It showed the same view of Earth, but different. Large parts of the continents were dark. Massive storm systems covered regions that should have been clear. Parts of the ocean looked wrong, discolored. This was Earth after the collapse, population of 6.6 billion. The ones who survived. Velthar stared at the image. The difference was shocking. It started with resource wars, Dae-sung continued. The screen showed various regions of Earth. Oil, water, rare minerals. Nations fought for control. Small conflicts at first. Border disputes, trade wars. Then it escalated. The screen showed weapons. Missiles, tanks, aircraft. Then bigger weapons. Much bigger. Nuclear weapons, Hana said quietly. We developed them decades earlier. They were supposed to prevent wars. The idea was that no one would start a war if they knew both sides would be destroyed. Mutually assured destruction. But someone used them anyway, Tae-ho added. His voice was bitter. The screen showed a city. One moment it was there. The next moment, a blinding light. When the light faded, the city was gone. Just a crater and a mushroom cloud. Velthar had seen weapons of mass destruction before. The galaxy had many dangerous technologies, but this was different. This was one species doing it to themselves. That was Tehran, Daesung said. Population of 15 million. It was the first city destroyed by nuclear weapons in the collapse. It was not the last. The screen showed more cities, more explosions. Moscow, Beijing, New York, Los Angeles, Mumbai, Cairo, London, Tokyo, one after another. The lights of civilization being snuffed out. 47 major cities were destroyed by nuclear weapons, Daesung said. His voice remained flat and emotionless. 218 smaller cities. The immediate death toll was 800 million people. Velthar felt sick. He had seen battles. He had seen casualties. But this was beyond warfare. This was genocide, self-inflicted genocide. The radiation spread, Hana said. She pointed to the screen showing contamination maps. Winds carried fallout across continents. Water sources were poisoned. Food supplies contaminated. Millions more died from radiation sickness in the following months. And that was just the nuclear weapons, Teho said. We also used chemical weapons, biological weapons, conventional bombs, everything we had. The screen showed images that Velthar could barely process. Entire cities burning, refugees fleeing in masses, hospitals overflowing, bodies in the streets. The Soul Firestorm, Daesung said. The screen focused on one city. My grandmother's story. The city was bombed continuously for 14 days. Not nuclear weapons, just conventional explosives, thousands upon thousands of them. When it was over, 90% of the city was destroyed. 4 million people died. The screen showed the aftermath. A city reduced to rubble. Survivors wandering through ruins like ghosts. The Asian resource wars, Hana said. The screen changed to show vast battlefields. Fought over water rights and agricultural land. 400 million dead over 8 years. That's where my family's story comes from. Entire regions were chemically contaminated to deny resources to the enemy, including civilian areas where my family lived. Velthar saw images of people with chemical burns, children with scars like Hana's, whole populations suffering. We destroyed our own environment, Daesung continued. Forests were burned as military tactics. Agricultural land was deliberately poisoned. Industrial centers released toxic materials into the air and water. The planet's ecosystem began to fail. The screen showed environmental data. Temperature changes, ocean acidification, massive extinctions of plant and animal species. We created a feedback loop of destruction, Hana explained. Resource scarcity led to war. War destroyed more resources. More scarcity led to more war. It spiraled out of control. Why did it not stop? Velthar asked. His voice was weak. Surely you could see the destruction. Why continue? Because each side believed they could win, Daesung said. Because the cost of losing seemed worse than the cost of fighting. Because hate and fear drove us forward even when logic should have stopped us. And because we're really good at killing, Teho added darkly. Humans are excellent at finding new ways to hurt each other. The screen showed more horrors. Velthar watched cities fall, nations collapse, civilizations crumble. The death toll kept climbing. 900 million, 1 billion, 2 billion, higher and higher. The collapse came when the ecosystem started failing, Daesung said. Crops failed worldwide, not from war. From environmental damage we had caused. Food supplies vanished. Fresh water became scarce everywhere, not just in war zones. Disease spread unchecked. The screen showed starvation, plague, social breakdown, governments falling apart, order dissolving into chaos. 3.2 billion dead total, Hana said. But that number doesn't capture the complete horror. Billions more suffered. Everyone who survived was traumatized, entire generations scarred, a planet broken. How did you survive? Velthar asked. He could barely form the words. We didn't have a choice, Dae Sung said. We either learned to work together or we went extinct. Some leaders started talking instead of fighting. Truces were formed, resources were shared. It happened slowly, years of negotiation while people starved and died. But eventually, we unified. The unification, Hana said. Not a victory, not a peace treaty, just exhaustion. We were too weak to fight anymore. And then we had to rebuild, Taeho said, with a broken planet, with poisoned land, with radiation zones everywhere, with billions of traumatized survivors who had lost everything. The screen showed the rebuilding. It was slow, painful, generations of work to clean up the mess, to restore the ecosystem, to create new societies from the ashes of the old. It took 40 years to stabilize, Dae Sung said. 40 years of struggle just to reach the point where we weren't dying anymore. Another 30 years to truly recover. To reach the stars, to build new cities where old ones had been destroyed. The reclaimed zones, Velthar said, understanding, where Taeho grew up. Yes, my childhood home was built on top of ruins, Taeho said. Ruins we created. I played in the graveyard of the old world. That's normal for my generation. That's just life. Velthar looked at the three humans. He saw them differently now. Dae Sung's calm demeanor was not emotionlessness. It was control. The discipline of someone whose grandmother survived hell. Hana's cold efficiency was not lack of feeling. It was focus. The determination of someone who inherited her family's scars. Taeho's haunted eyes were not weakness. They were memory, the burden of growing up surrounded by death. Every human alive today is connected to the collapse, Dae Sung said. Everyone lost family. Everyone carries trauma. Everyone knows what we're capable of doing to ourselves. That's why we fight the way we do, Hana added. When we say we don't leave people behind, we mean it. Because we know what happens when society breaks down, when people abandon each other. We've seen it. We've lived it. And that's why we don't celebrate our warrior culture, Dae Sung said. Because being a warrior meant killing billions of our own people. There's no honor in that. No glory. Just shame and determination to never let it happen again. Velthar sat in silence. He had wanted to understand humans. Now he did, and he wished he didn't. You call yourselves weak, Velthar said slowly, but you survived an extinction event, one you caused yourselves. Surviving doesn't make us strong, Dae Sung said. It just makes us stubborn, and careful, and determined. When you see us in battle, Hana said, you're seeing people who know exactly how terrible war can be, who've inherited the memory of billions of dead, who fight anyway because the alternative is letting it happen again. We're not the galaxy's best warriors, Taeho said. We're the galaxy's most desperate survivors. Velthar stood. His legs were shaking. I need time to process this. Take all the time you need, Dae Sung said. We'll be here. Velthar left the briefing room. He walked through the ship in a daze. He saw the human crew with completely new eyes. Every scar told a story. Every face carried history. Every person was a descendant of survivors. The galaxy thought humans were weak, soft, fragile, unsuited for warfare. The galaxy had no idea. Humans weren't weak. They were tempered, forged in an apocalypse fire, rebuilt from ashes. And they had chosen to join the galaxy not to conquer, but to prevent others from suffering what they had suffered. Velthar went to his quarters. For the first time in 60 years of military service, he needed to sit down and truly think about what he had seen. The Crithian Empire thought they were the galaxy's greatest warriors. But they had never faced what humans had faced. They had never fought for survival against extinction, against themselves. Velthar finally understood, and understanding changed everything. 5 days later, the Eternal Vigilance received an urgent message from Coalition Command. A Vorgath stronghold was holding 12 Coalition prisoners. Intelligence showed the prisoners were being executed one by one. Time was running out. Velthar stood on the bridge as Dae Sung reviewed the data. The stronghold was heavily defended, deep in Vorgath territory. Any rescue mission would be extremely dangerous. "Command is ordering us to maintain position and wait for reinforcements," Dae Sung said. He stared at the tactical display. "Reinforcements will arrive in 4 days." "That is the logical choice," Velthar said. "A direct assault would be suicide." "The prisoners don't have 4 days." Hana pointed at the intelligence report. "The Vorgath are executing 1 prisoner every 12 hours. By the time reinforcements arrive, they'll all be dead." Silence filled the bridge. Velthar knew what was coming. He could see it in Dae Sung's eyes. That same look from the battle. That determination. That refusal to abandon people. "I'm requesting permission to lead a volunteer rescue mission," Dae Sung said. "Small team, fast insertion, extract the prisoners and get out." "Captain, command has given direct orders to wait," one officer said carefully. "I know. That's why I said volunteer mission. Anyone who comes does so by choice. I won't order anyone into this." Velthar watched the human crew. One by one, they stepped forward. Hana, Taeho, despite his healing arms. Engineers, Marines, pilots, nearly half the crew volunteered. "This is against regulations," Velthar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," Dae Sung agreed. "But those are our people in that stronghold, coalition members. Maybe human, maybe alien. Doesn't matter. They're ours. And we don't leave our people behind." Velthar thought about what he had learned. About the collapse. About 3 billion dead. About humans who had survived the unsurvivable and made a choice. Never again. Never abandon anyone. "I will join your mission," Velthar said. Dae Sung looked surprised. "Commander, you don't have to. This isn't your responsibility." "I am part of this crew now," Velthar said. "I understand what it means to be human, to be coalition. We protect each other. I will not stay behind while others risk everything." Dae Sung nodded slowly. "Welcome to the team, Commander." 6 hours later, a small transport ship left the Eternal Vigilance. 12 volunteers, including Velthar. They flew dark and silent toward the Vorgath stronghold. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Land outside the stronghold's detection range. Infiltrate on foot. Locate the prisoners. Extract them. Get back to the transport before the Vorgath could organize a response. Simple, but not easy. They landed on a barren moon where the stronghold was located. The facility was built into a mountain, heavily armed. Multiple guard posts. The odds were terrible. "Stay close, stay quiet," Dae Sung whispered over the comm. "We move fast. If we're detected, the mission fails." They moved through the darkness. Velthar was impressed by their stealth. These humans were small and quiet. They used the terrain perfectly. Even wounded Taeho moved with practiced silence. They reached the facility's outer wall. Hana placed charges on a ventilation shaft. Small controlled explosion. They were inside. The interior was a maze of corridors and guard posts. They moved like shadows. Velthar used his strength to silently disable Vorgath guards. The humans used technology and precision. They worked together perfectly. They found the prison block. 6 cells. 12 prisoners. Most were badly injured. Some could barely walk. "Get them up," Dae Sung ordered. "We're leaving. Now!" But alarms started blaring. They had been detected. "Go! Go! Go!" Hana shouted. They ran, carrying wounded prisoners. Vorgath guards poured into the corridors. Weapons fire filled the air. Velthar fought with everything he had. His 4 arms became weapons of destruction. He cleared a path. But there were too many guards. The team was pinned down in a junction point. "We're not going to make it," one Marine said. "Yes, we are," Dae-sung said firmly. "Hana, get the prisoners to the transport. Taeho, Velthar, and I will hold this position." "Captain, that's suicide," Hana protested. "That's an order, Lieutenant. Those prisoners need to survive. Get them out." Velthar watched Hana's face. She wanted to argue, but she nodded. "Don't you dare die here, sir. I'll do my best." Hana led the prisoners and half the team toward the exit. Dae-sung, Taeho, Velthar, and 3 Marines stayed behind. They set up a defensive position in the junction. The Vorgath came in waves. Velthar fought with precision and power. The humans fought with that same desperate determination he had seen in the first battle. They gave no ground. Taeho's casts were covered in blood, his own and enemy blood, but he kept firing. "Just like old times," he muttered, "holding the line when everything's gone to hell." "You have done this before?" Velthar asked between shots. "Not exactly like this, but similar. My grandfather told me stories about holding positions during the collapse, about fighting when there was no hope, about doing it anyway because someone had to. Guess it runs in the family." A Vorgath grenade landed near them. Dae-sung grabbed it and threw it back in one smooth motion. It exploded among the enemy. He did not even flinch. "Captain, that could have killed you," Velthar said, "but it didn't. Keep firing." They held the junction for 12 minutes. It felt like hours. Finally, Hana's voice came through the comm. "All prisoners secured. Transport is ready. Get out of there." "Fall back," Dae-sung ordered. They moved in controlled retreat, fighting and moving. One Marine took a hit. Velthar grabbed him and carried him. The human weighed almost nothing. They reached the ventilation shaft. One by one, they climbed out. Velthar went last, providing covering fire. A shot hit his armor. It cracked but held. He climbed out and ran. The transport lifted off as Vorgath forces poured out of the facility. Energy beams struck around them, but they were airborne. They were clear. Inside the transport, Hana worked frantically on the wounded. The rescued prisoners were in bad shape, but they were alive. "Everyone accounted for," one Marine reported. "No casualties." Dae-sung leaned back against the wall. His shoulder was bleeding again. The same wound from the earlier battle had reopened. He did not seem to notice. Velthar sat down heavily. His armor was damaged. His body ached. But he felt something he had not expected. Pride, not in himself, in these humans, in what they had accomplished. "That was the most reckless thing I have ever done," Velthar said. "Welcome to human military service," Taeho said with a tired smile. "We got them all out," Hana said. She looked at Dae-sung. 12 for 12, no one left behind." "Never," Dae-sung said quietly. Back on the Eternal Vigilance, there was chaos. The crew celebrated the successful rescue. Command was sending angry messages about unauthorized missions, but Dae-sung handled it calmly. He would face whatever consequences came. That night, Velthar found Dae-sung in the observation deck. The captain stood looking at the stars. He looked exhausted, but satisfied. "Captain, I must speak with you," Velthar said. "If this is about the mission, it is not." Velthar approached and stood beside him. "I came to offer you something." He raised his 4 arms in the Krithian warrior's salute. It was a gesture reserved only for the most honored, only for those who had proven themselves beyond question. "I thought I understood warfare," Velthar said. "I have fought for 60 years. I have seen 100 worlds. I have trained in the greatest military traditions in the galaxy. But I never understood what it meant to truly fight for survival. Commander, let me finish." Velthar lowered his arms. You humans are not the strongest species. You are not the fastest. You do not have the best technology or the longest military tradition. But you have something more important. You have survived extinction. You have rebuilt from ashes. And you have chosen to use that experience to protect others. Dai Sung looked at him. We do what we have to do. No, you do more than that. You could have become monsters after the collapse. You could have become conquerors or destroyers. But you chose cooperation. You chose to join the galaxy and help prevent others from suffering what you suffered. That is true strength. I don't know if it's strength, Dae Sung said. Sometimes it feels like stubbornness or fear. We're terrified of seeing the collapse happen again, to anyone. That fear drives you to do impossible things, to hold impossible positions, to refuse to leave people behind even when logic says you should. You fight like every life matters because you know what it means to lose billions. Hana entered the observation deck. She carried medical supplies. Captain, you're bleeding through your uniform again. Sit. Dae Sung sighed but sat down. As Hana treated his wound, Velthar continued. The galaxy sees humanity as a young species, Velthar said. Weak, inexperienced. They do not understand what you are. You are survivors of an apocalypse, warriors forged in nuclear fire, builders who reconstructed civilization from nothing. We're just people doing our best, Hana said as she worked. We're not special. We're just stubborn. You are special. Every species has wars. But most wars are fought for resources or territory or honor. Your wars were fought for survival against yourselves. You faced extinction and chose to live. That changes everything. Taeho appeared in the doorway. His casts had been replaced with lighter braces. Captain, command is on the line. They want to talk about the unauthorized rescue mission. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, Dae Sung said. Taeho nodded and left. Hana finished bandaging and started packing her supplies. I will be filing my report with Coalition Command, Velthar said, and with the Krithian Empire. They need to understand who they have allied with. What will you tell them? Dae Sung asked. The truth. That humanity is not the weakest species in the Coalition. You are the most tempered. You know exactly how terrible war can be. You fight anyway because you refuse to let others experience what you experienced. You are not warriors seeking glory. You are survivors ensuring no one else has to survive what you survived. Dae Sung stood. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear. Tell them we're not perfect, Commander. We're scarred. We're traumatized. We're still figuring out how to live with what we did to ourselves. But we're here. We endured. And we'll make sure our children never have to face what we faced. That is exactly what makes you strong, Velthar said. He offered his hand in the human gesture. It has been an honor serving with you, Captain. Dae Sung shook his hand firmly. The honor was ours, Commander. As Velthar left the observation deck, he looked back at the humans. Dae Sung, Hana, and Taeho. 3 people carrying the weight of billions of dead. 3 survivors of an apocalypse that nearly destroyed their species. 3 warriors who fought not for glory, but to prevent others from suffering. The galaxy would learn the truth about humanity. Velthar would make sure of it. They were not the youngest species or the weakest. They were survivors, and that made all the difference. Velthar smiled. For the first time since arriving on this ship, he felt he truly understood his human crewmates, and he was proud to fight alongside them. The Eternal Vigilance continued its patrol. The crew returned to their duties, but something had changed. The exchange program had succeeded in ways no one expected. Understanding had been reached, respect had been earned. And somewhere in the galaxy, the story of humanity's survival would begin to spread. The story of a species that nearly died and chose to live, that faced extinction and chose cooperation, that rebuilt from ashes and reached for the stars. not as conquerors, not as warriors seeking glory, but as survivors determined to make sure no one else would have to endure what they endured. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, and it was a gift forged in the fires of the collapse.